In today's world, the battle for hearts and minds through media is as critical and as destructive as the physical battlefields of missiles, bombs, and tanks. Al Jazeera is not just a news network. It has become a weapon of war, wielded in the battle of narratives by those who seek to destroy Israel and delegitimize its right to exist. I'm Mati Shoshani, and welcome to another episode of In Our Neighborhood. In the ongoing war between Israel and its Middle Eastern enemies, Al Jazeera, Qatar's state-funded media giant, has played a pivotal role in shaping global perceptions. While presenting itself as an independent news outlet, Al Jazeera often operates as a propaganda tool, amplifying the voices of terrorist organizations like Hamas and fostering anti-Israel sentiment worldwide. Its coverage is strategically crafted to vilify Israel while portraying its enemies as victims, manipulating public opinion to justify violence and incite hatred. And by spreading disinformation and glorifying extremism, Al Jazeera fuels the axis of evil's ideological war, making it a critical component of their strategy to isolate and delegitimize Israel on the world stage. This is not journalism. It's propaganda weaponized to distort truth and undermine the moral clarity of good versus evil. But before we dive deeper, make sure to like this video and subscribe to TBN Israel's YouTube channel. Your support and your care help us get the truth out to the world. I'm meeting with Ariel Admoni from the Bar-Ilan University, an expert in Qatar, to explore Al Jazeera's pivotal role in Israel's ongoing war against those who seek to destroy and delegitimize its right to exist. Qatar, in my life, in the life of many Israelis and many Westerners, it plays some very, very contradicting roles. It is a country that, on the one hand, has Al Jazeera, which is, we'll talk about it. On the other hand, it supports terrorism in cash. On the third hand, it is a mediator in negotiations around the Middle East and elsewhere. And I can't think of other countries that play such a contradicting role in international relations. So how did they end up in this position? What's their backstory?
Qatar, for a long time, wasn't independent. And the independence they received in 1971. And Qatar, until the 1990, was a place that actually nobody's care about. The major change was finding an exploration of gas in 1990. So for that reason, Qatar decided to put itself on the map. You mentioned before Al Jazeera. In Arabic, Shiba Al Jazeera, on shortcut Al Jazeera, is the peninsula. And when you look at the map of the Arabian Peninsula, you think about the Arabian Peninsula. You don't think about the little thumb that is called Qatar. And Al Jazeera and Qatar Airways that relaunched 3 years later in 1997 were an example to the fact that Qatar tried to put itself on the map. Qatar wanted to be a leading factor, a leading actor that can influence and affect international results. For that reason, they want to be involved in many fronts as they can. It's crucial to understand the fact that Qatar wants to be in the room and one of the decision makers. This region is all the time looking on each other to see what the other is doing and then decided what I can do.
So Qatar makes this decision where they no longer want to be just a small state, they want to be more influential. They start Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera is loved and Al Jazeera is hated and feared by many people around the world. Al Jazeera does do true journalism, and then sometimes they lie completely. Both of them live at the same time. Part of the danger of it, it's viewed as similar to other Western outlets, when in fact it's not. It's not independent and it's backed by a radical Muslim country, very different than most media outlets. Still, it's accepted as a reasonable source of information, and in that they're different than others. They're not an Iranian outlet that's identified with the government. They're not Syrian. They're not Palestinian. They are a reputable media outlet, and yet they spread lies and support terrorism. But I'd be interested in your take on what Al Jazeera actually does and what their agenda is.
So regarding Al Jazeera, there was a lot of speculation about its intent and its goals. Some say it's an Islamist voice amplifier, some call it even too much liberal. We need to remember that when Qatar wanted to put itself on the map, they needed a voice that will amplify the Qatar uniqueness. And this is why Qatar and Al Jazeera want the attention. They want the thing that talked about, and this is why they go with the Islamists, because they get the exclusive. We saw during the war that Hamas gave them exclusive stories. We saw before it, Bin Laden tapes in Al Jazeera. We saw that other news outlets, like the Houthis, relied on broadcasts of Al Jazeera. And at the same time, there were broadcasts in Al Jazeera that wasn't according, let's say, Islamic beliefs. Already in the 1990s, Qatar hosted a panel. They call it Linisal Fakat. In English, we say only for women. And in the Arab world, in 1990, this was a big issue. Qatar wants the attention, and this is why Al Jazeera tried to focus on whatever gets this attention.
But you could say that about everyone. And I think where any news outlet, if it's following the ratings, you sometimes have to sort of slide down the slide of sensationalism. That's okay. We'll put that aside. That's sort of common practice. I think where Al Jazeera is unique is in the extreme moments. Israel outlawed Al Jazeera from operating within the country for spreading lies and for supporting terrorism. It isn't a little more than other people, it's extreme. There are images of freelancers who worked with Al Jazeera for many years being embedded with Hamas fighters on October 7th. And Israel, I think, was, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the last countries to remove Al Jazeera from its country. Many of the other neighbors in this area have removed them long ago.
There is a story about Hosni Mubarak, the former president of Egypt. He visited Doha and he toured the capital. And he saw Al Jazeera building, and he commented that it's absurd that a building in a size of medium hotel in Cairo is causing him so much trouble. They got criticized not just by Arab countries. Many Secretary of States in the US tried to convince Qatar to contain Al Jazeera. And Qatar refused time and time again, and the main argument was it's independent news source and we will not control them. Qatar knew how to manipulate Western values like freedom of press. Qatar knew how to use narratives, knew how to exploit narratives. It doesn't matter the facts. As long there is good headlines, or in Qatar, any headlines, because there is no such thing for them, bad publicity. And this is the danger of Al Jazeera.
Al Jazeera is this great example for something else. In the West, we have trouble saying these two are not equal. CNN, CBS, TBN in this case, they'll think it's equivalent to Al Jazeera. And it's not true. And you look at that, you're like, wait a minute, this is dangerous.
Qatar knew how to make it, let's say, reliable in Western societies as being humanitarian, as being pro-Western, as being a non-NATO major ally. Yeah. First time you heard it, you mock it. But the third and the fourth and the fifth time, you get used to it. And you're actually convinced by it. The Saudis and the Emiratis expected the West to respond and expect Israel to respond. Why you rely on the same state that you know is not with any side? If you talk with everybody, you talk with nobody.
You're right. They do support terrorism directly. They did host, up till this month, Hamas leadership within their country. They are actively involved in terrorism, and at the same time, we accept them sort of coming from the other side of the table. We're the peace bringers, we're the negotiators of the Middle East, we're the brokers of peace, and it's the same guy who 10 minutes ago was like handing over suitcases full of cash to terrorists. Why is it that other countries accept that?
Qatar retained itself as a subcontractor to the US, to Germany, as the one that can do the dirty work for the West. And the fact that we not talk with terrorists, we have a guy that talk with terrorists. But Actually, it's kind of the problem is in the West. When you talk with terror, even by intermediates, you talk with terror, you legitimate terror. Qatar knew that as long you will not position itself truly with no one, they with the Iranians, and the Iranians are angry about them because they don't have the level of economic cooperation as they like. We are with the US, and the US campuses on Doha will host events that criticize the US. And as long you're not with anyone fully, everyone needs you.
But why? I want to go back to the question because this is bothering me. I'm not able to reconcile why the Qataris are the way they are. I have trouble explaining these people. Iran's easy to explain. They're open about it. They wave a big flag. They say we are this type of Shia Islam, and our goal in the world is to bring, the caliphate or whatever it is that they're promoting that day. And we're going to do it by bringing down the devil, the Jews, and the Americans. They're clear about it. And the Saudis say, we want to be the kings of Islam, and specifically Sunni Islam, and specifically through the, Mecca, and everyone has their angle. I don't get the Qataris. Who are they? They're just a small country, relatively speaking, and so their actions don't make sense to me. Like, what is it in their DNA that makes them so active and so obsessive about trying to affect and change things around them?
If we remember their history, the fact that until the 1990s, nobody's care about them, and they take them for granted. Qatar want to be the place that get to decide. As you mentioned, their smallness is an issue. For that reason, there was threats against their sovereignty. And if I was a decision maker, if I was important to everyone, so everyone don't mess with me. For an example, the World Cup, the day of the final was December 18. December 18, not surprising to know, this is the foundation day of Qatar. And the fact that on its national day, the Qatari Emir adorned Messi with a traditional cloak. It was, as the BBC reported, symbolic to the entire region.
What you're describing, if I look at the analogy of Israel being an anomaly, small state surrounded by large enemies, Qatar is the perfect storm. Qatar is a perfect storm in geopolitics. They're a small nation with limited human resources in a heavyweight neighborhood, surrounded by massive enemies that can threaten its survival, so they have to respond disproportionately. They're disproportionately wealthy compared to other people in the area, so they have natural resources that they can exploit to their benefit. They have dreams of grandeur to make up for lost time in the fact that they're the young brother that wants to compete with its older brothers. So it spends more money on PR through Al Jazeera. It spends more money on let's call it skirmishes in the region when it comes to geopolitics. And it's trying to make up for the fact that it's smaller, weaker, by being loud and vocal and strong publicly in the international relations of the area. And they do that so effectively that we're sitting here in Tel Aviv talking about this small Gulf state of Qatar. And I think that's where we wrap up this conversation. I want to thank you for the depth of thought here. You did a very good job of trying to pull out the pieces here.
Thank you very much. This was hard.
Thank you for joining this important conversation on In Our Neighborhood. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this video and help ensure the truth gets out. Your support makes a true difference. Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.